You've been lied to about suffering, not by any person, but by the entire modern world. We're taught that pain is the enemy, that a good life is one where we avoid, numb, or escape it at all costs. But what if this very belief is why so many of us feel hollow, anxious, and strangely exhausted by comfort itself? Buddhism and Friedrich Nietzsche, two philosophies separated by millennia and geography, whisper the same dangerous truth. Suffering isn't your curse. It's your most misunderstood teacher. This idea feels almost offensive in a culture that sells us endless shortcuts to happiness. Meditation apps promise instant calm. Productivity gurus preach effortless success. Pharmaceutical ads guarantee relief in 30 minutes or less. Yet beneath this glossy surface, something is rotting. The more we run from discomfort, the more it chases us, not as a shadow, but as a growing tidal wave of quiet despair. Ask yourself, if comfort is the answer, why do the most comfortable generations in history also report the highest rates of depression and anxiety? If suffering is meaningless, why do those who've endured profound hardship often describe it as the catalyst for their deepest growth? Why does scrolling through a highlight reel of other people's lives leave us feeling emptier, not more fulfilled? We're caught in a paradox. We've built a world designed to eliminate suffering, yet in doing so we've stripped life of its texture, its stakes, its meaning. The ancient Buddhists knew this well. They called it dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of existence. Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher who famously declared, "God is dead," saw it too. Humans don't crumble from suffering. They crumble from suffering without a why. The data paints a damning picture. Chronic pain patients prescribed opioids often end up in a double trap. Their physical pain persists, now tangled with addiction. Avoidance bred deeper suffering. A 2023 study found that people who regularly suppress negative emotions rather than face them show higher inflammation markers, literal bodily decay from emotional avoidance. Gen Z reports higher rates of loneliness than any generation before them, despite, or because of, being the most digitally connected. Even our language betrays us. We speak of pain management, not pain alchemy. We medicate, distract, and optimize, rarely asking, what if the pain itself is trying to tell me something? This isn't just about individual struggle. It's about a civilization-wide blind spot. From Silicon Valley's obsession with frictionless experiences to the wellness industry's fixation on positive vibes only, we've pathologized the very thing that makes us human. Here's where it all gets unsettling. Both Buddhism and Nietzsche, despite their stark differences, agree on a radical idea. Suffering isn't the problem. Your resistance to it is. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from craving, our desperate grip on what we want and our frantic push against what we don't. Nietzsche argued that most people don't suffer too much. They suffer too poorly, wasting pain by resenting it rather than using it as fuel. This isn't masochism. It's not about glorifying pain. It's about recognizing a simple but terrifying truth. The way you relate to suffering determines whether it breaks you or forges you. So why does modern psychology now echo these ancient insights? Why do studies on post-traumatic growth show that people often emerge from crises with greater resilience, clarity, and even joy? And most importantly, how can we stop running from suffering and start partnering with it? To answer that, we must descend into the roots, into the psychology of avoidance, the philosophy of endurance, and the neuroscience of how pain reshapes the brain. Because the real question isn't how to suffer less, it's how to suffer better. The real engine behind our suffering isn't the pain itself, but our relationship to it, a relationship shaped by two invisible forces, existential avoidance and the commodification of comfort. Existential avoidance is the unconscious habit of fleeing discomfort physically, emotionally, and intellectually. It's the scroll when we're lonely, the pill when we're restless, the hustle when we're unfulfilled. This avoidance isn't weakness, it's a survival instinct gone haywire. Evolution wired us to prioritize short-term relief, but modernity has turned this into a trap. We've conflated comfort with safety, mistaking the absence of pain for the presence of well-being. The second force is societal, a culture that monetizes comfort and pathologizes struggle. Capitalism thrives on selling solutions to discomfort, luxury, entertainment, pharmaceuticals, while framing suffering as a personal failure. If you're unhappy, buy this. If you're anxious, take this. The message is clear. Your pain is a problem to be solved, not a truth to be understood. This creates a vicious cycle. The more we avoid suffering, the less tolerance we develop for it. Like a muscle never exercised, our capacity to endure atrophies. Buddhism calls this aversion, the root of suffering. Nietzsche saw it as decadence, a refusal to engage with life's full spectrum. Nietzsche argued that growth requires a pathos of distance, a willingness to stand apart from the herd and embrace struggle. He mocked his time's comfortable morality, which equated goodness with ease. You shall not be too comfortable, he warned, lest you lose your edge. His concept of amor fati, love of fate, demands that we not only endure suffering, but desire it as fuel for transformation. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron offers a parallel. We think that if we let the pain in, it'll destroy us. But the truth is, it's already destroying us by keeping us stuck. Her practice of Shenpa, leaning into discomfort instead of resisting it, aligns with Nietzsche's call for engagement. It's not about masochism, but curiosity. What is this pain trying to teach me? Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl identified a uniquely modern paradox. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. His concept of tragic optimism, finding meaning in suffering, bridges Buddhism and Nietzsche. Suffering, he argued, becomes bearable when it's tied to a purpose larger than oneself, a notion echoed in the Buddhist Bodhisattva vow to transform personal pain into compassion for others. Modern philosopher Byung-Chul Han critiques neoliberalism's demand for constant self-optimization. We've internalized the pressure to fix ourselves, turning suffering into a personal flaw. The burnout society, he writes, is not exhausted by external oppression, but by internal self-exploitation. We've become both the oppressor and the oppressed. This tension isn't new. The Stoics of ancient Greece saw suffering as a test of character. Medieval ascetics sought spiritual growth through physical deprivation, but the Industrial Revolution shifted the narrative. As societies prioritized productivity, suffering became a problem, a sign of inefficiency. Today, technology amplifies this. Social media sells a curated good life, making ordinary struggles feel like personal failures. Algorithms thrive on outrage and envy, keeping us in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction. We're trapped in what Nietzsche called ressentiment, a passive hatred of life's challenges, masked as contentment. Consider the opioid crisis, a physical manifestation of existential avoidance. Painkillers numb not just the body but the soul, creating a feedback loop of dependency. Similarly, self-care culture often reduces wellness to consumerism, buying candles instead of confronting burnout's root causes. The common advice, just think positive or take a pill, is a band-aid on a bullet wound. It misunderstands the nature of suffering. Take mindfulness apps. While meditation is rooted in Buddhist practice, its modern incarnations often strip away the ethical framework. Calm becomes a product, not a practice. As Chodron notes, you can't microwave enlightenment. True mindfulness requires sitting with discomfort, not swiping left on it. Similarly, the self-help industry's obsession with manifesting ignores Nietzsche's warning. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. Chasing happiness at all costs risks turning us into hollow optimists, blind to life's shadows. Even psychology has fallen short. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, teaches us to reframe negative thoughts, a useful tool, but often neglects the value of listening to those thoughts. As Frankl wrote, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. Sometimes despair is rational. So how do we escape this cycle? What if the answer isn't to fix suffering, but to reimagine it? Buddhism offers a radical reframe. Suffering is the first noble truth, not because life is inherently bad, but because clinging to impermanence is. Nietzsche proposes a different path. Become who you are, a call to alchemize pain into strength. But how does this work in practice? How do we move from theory to lived experience? And what does it look like to suffer well in a world that equates worth with comfort? To answer this, we must confront the unseen consequences of our avoidance, the ways it warps our brains, our relationships, and our very sense of self. The refusal to engage with suffering doesn't just leave us stuck, it rewires us. It shapes how we think, feel, and relate to others in ways we rarely notice. This silent transformation is insidious because it happens beneath the surface like water-eroding rock over decades. Consider the way existential avoidance trains our attention. When discomfort arises, we instinctively reach for a distraction, a phone, a snack, a Netflix binge. Over time, this habit fragments our focus. We lose the ability to sit still, to listen deeply, not just to ourselves but to others. Conversations become transactional, relationships grow shallow, but the impact runs deeper. Avoidance doesn't eliminate pain, it displaces it. Suppressed emotions fester, manifesting as anxiety, anger, or chronic fatigue. A 2023 study found that emotional suppression correlates with elevated cortisol levels, weakening the immune system and increasing inflammation. In other words, the very act of running from pain makes us physically sick. Even more alarming is the effect on self-perception. By outsourcing our coping mechanisms, relying on apps, pills, or external validation, we outsource our sense of agency. We begin to see ourselves as passive recipients of life's hardships rather than active participants in shaping our response. I am stressed, we say, as if stress were an immutable fact, not a reaction we can influence. To understand why avoidance feels so natural, we must look at the brain. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, plays a central role. Every time we distract ourselves from discomfort by scrolling, shopping, or snacking, we trigger a small dopamine release. This creates a feedback loop. Discomfort, distraction, temporary relief, repeat. Cognitive biases reinforce this cycle. The availability heuristic, for instance, leads us to overestimate the effectiveness of quick fixes. If scrolling Instagram briefly dulls our sadness, we assume it's the solution, ignoring its long-term costs. Similarly, social proof amplifies the problem. Seeing others numb their pain through consumption normalizes the behavior, making it harder to resist. Cultural conditioning further entrenches these patterns. Capitalism thrives on perpetual dissatisfaction. Advertisements sell not just products but promises. Buy this and you'll be happy. Use this app and you'll succeed. Consumer culture frames well-being as something to purchase, not cultivate. Even mindfulness, a practice rooted in Buddhist ethics, has been commodified into 50-lon monthly subscriptions for meditation apps. What makes this dynamic so insidious is how systems are designed to keep us trapped. Social media algorithms, for example, exploit our aversion to discomfort. They offer endless novelty, a dopamine hit with every scroll, but no lasting satisfaction. Each notification interrupts whatever discomfort we might have been processing, pulling us back into the cycle. Similarly, economic structures incentivize burnout. Hustle culture glorifies overwork while penalizing rest. Taking time to reflect or heal is framed as laziness, a moral failing. As philosopher Byung-Chul Han notes, modern society has turned us into self-exploiting subjects, driven by internalized pressure to optimize every moment. Psychologically, defense mechanisms, like denial and rationalization, shield us from confronting uncomfortable truths. We tell ourselves, "I'm too busy to deal with this now," or "it's not that bad." These narratives protect us in the short term, but trap us in the long run. Like a river carving a canyon, they deepen the grooves of avoidance until they define our lives. Imagine Sarah, a 28-year-old marketing professional. On paper, her life looks enviable: a steady job, a cozy apartment, a vibrant social media presence. But beneath the surface, she feels adrift. Her weekends blur into a haze of binge-watching and takeout. Her friendships revolve around brunch photos rather than meaningful connection. Sarah represents millions. She isn't lazy or broken. She's caught in a web of unseen forces. Her constant scrolling numbs her loneliness, but prevents her from addressing its root cause. Her reliance on external validation keeps her tethered to a treadmill of achievement without fulfillment. Now zoom out. Picture entire generations raised on instant gratification and curated perfection. Anxiety spikes, loneliness festers, creativity stagnates. Why? Because avoiding discomfort stifles risk-taking, the very essence of creativity. Artists, entrepreneurs, activists all thrive on leaning into uncertainty, on embracing the tension between what is and what could be. This isn't just personal, it's collective. A society that avoids suffering produces citizens who avoid responsibility. Political apathy flourishes, environmental crises worsen. Systems crumble because no one wants to confront the hard truths required to fix them. So, how do we break free? What does it mean to rebel against a system and a mindset that equates worth with comfort? Buddhism offers a path. Lean into discomfort, not as punishment, but as practice. Nietzsche proposes another. Transmute suffering into strength, turning pain into art, action, or meaning. Both demand courage, a willingness to face what scares us most. But rebellion isn't just philosophical, it's practical. It requires tools, habits, and shifts in perspective. And it begins with recognizing that the chains binding us are, paradoxically, of our own making. In the next section, we'll explore how to dismantle those chains. How do we stop outsourcing our power and start reclaiming it? What counterintuitive practices can help us forge a new relationship with suffering? One that liberates rather than enslaves? What if the solution isn't to manage suffering, but to befriend it? What if the path forward requires a radical departure, not from pain itself, but from the belief that pain is the enemy? Modern culture conditions us to see suffering as a defect, a glitch in the system. But what if it's not a bug, it's a feature? Buddhism frames suffering, dukkha, as an inherent part of life, not something to eradicate, but to understand. Nietzsche takes this further. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Both perspectives challenge us to stop viewing pain as punishment and start seeing it as potential, a raw material we can shape into meaning. This reframing demands courage. It asks us to step off the treadmill of comfort and confront the wilderness within. To borrow a metaphor from nature, think of a river carving through rock. The river doesn't fight the resistance, it flows with it, transforming obstacles into pathways. Suffering, too, can carve new channels in our psyche, if we let it. The first counterintuitive practice is simple yet profound. Lean into discomfort instead of avoiding it. Pema Chodron calls this shenpa, the urge to scratch the itch of unease, and suggests sitting with it instead. When sadness arises, don't reach for your phone. Sit quietly and ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? This isn't masochism, it's curiosity. Studies show that labeling emotions reduces their intensity. By naming our pain, we take the first step toward reclaiming power over it. Instead of being swept away by the current, we learn to navigate it. Another mindset shift. View suffering as feedback, not failure. In design thinking, failure is reframed as iteration, a necessary step toward innovation. Apply this lens to life. Every moment of pain carries information about unmet needs, misaligned values, or untapped potential. For example, burnout isn't a personal flaw, it's a signal that your boundaries are porous. Loneliness isn't a sign of inadequacy, it's a reminder of your need for connection. When we reframe pain as data, we stop fearing it and start learning from it. Nietzsche's concept of amor fati offers a third practice. Love your fate, even the painful parts. This doesn't mean resigning yourself to suffering, but embracing it as integral to your journey. Ask yourself, how can I use this pain to grow stronger, wiser, or more compassionate? Consider Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz by finding meaning in unimaginable suffering. He didn't deny his pain, he transformed it into purpose. This alchemy is available to all of us, though it requires effort. As Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." History offers countless examples of individuals who turned suffering into strength. Take Harriet Tubman, who endured brutal enslavement only to become one of history's greatest liberators. Her suffering wasn't erased, it fueled her mission. Or Vincent van Gogh, whose mental anguish birthed some of humanity's most luminous art. These figures remind us that pain, while painful, is also fertile ground for creation. Closer to home, consider modern activists like Greta Thunberg. Diagnosed with selective mutism, she channeled her struggles into advocacy, sparking a global climate movement. Her story underscores a universal truth. Transformation often begins in the crucible of discomfort. Ultimately, breaking free requires reclaiming autonomy, the ability to define your own relationship with suffering. Too often, we outsource this power to societal norms, pharmaceuticals, or algorithms. We let external forces dictate what's acceptable and what's unbearable, but the ultimate authority lies within you. Ask yourself, what do I value more than comfort? Is it authenticity, connection, contribution? Once you identify your core values, use them as a compass. Let them guide you through the storms of life rather than clinging to the fleeting calm of avoidance. Cultivate practices that strengthen your inner compass. Journaling, meditation, and solitude help you tune into your true self amid the noise. Surround yourself with people who challenge and inspire you, not those who enable escapism. Build habits that prioritize long-term growth over short-term relief. These practices are powerful, but they point to a deeper realization, a realization about who you are and why you're here, about the nature of suffering and its role in shaping not just individuals, but civilizations. What if suffering isn't random? What if it's a call to wake up, to pay attention, to engage fully with life? And what if the real rebellion isn't against pain, but against the lie that happiness means its absence? In the next section, we'll uncover this ultimate truth, the paradigm-shifting insight that ties everything together. It's a revelation that will change how you see not just suffering, but existence itself. Here is the ultimate truth we've been circling. Suffering isn't an obstacle to happiness, it is happiness. Not in the sense of wallowing or glorifying pain, but in the way a river carves through rock to create beauty. Suffering strips away illusion, forcing us to confront what's real. It reveals our fragility, yes, but also our resilience. This realization flips the script on everything modernity has taught us. We've been conditioned to see suffering as a defect, a failure, something to fix. But what if it's the opposite? What if suffering is the raw material of transformation, the fire that tempers steel? As Nietzsche wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." And as Buddhism teaches, suffering, dukkha, is the first noble truth because it awakens us to life's impermanence, and thus its preciousness. The key lies in how we relate to suffering. When we resist it, we amplify it. When we embrace it, not with resignation but with curiosity, we alchemize it into meaning. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Studies show that reframing pain as purposeful reduces its perceived intensity. Pain becomes less about punishment and more about potential. At first glance, this feels backward. How can suffering be anything other than bad? Yet look closer. Every moment of growth, personal, societal, spiritual, has emerged from struggle. The civil rights movement didn't arise from comfort, but from centuries of oppression. Art doesn't spring from ease, but from tension. Love doesn't deepen without vulnerability, which always carries the risk of loss. Consider your own life. Your proudest achievements weren't born from convenience, but from challenge. The project that stretched you past your limits, the relationship that forced you to grow up, the grief that broke you open, making room for compassion. These moments hurt, but they also shaped you. This paradox explains why avoidance fails. When we numb pain, we numb joy. When we suppress discomfort, we suppress vitality. Life isn't a flat line of safety. It's a sin wave of highs and lows. To cut out the lows is to lose the highs. Philosophically, this aligns with Nietzsche's amor fati, love of fate, and Buddhism's bodhisattva vow. Both demand that we stop fighting reality and start engaging with it fully. Suffering isn't the problem. Resistance is. Acceptance isn't passive surrender. It's active participation. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves crash against the shore, relentless and wild. You have two choices: stand rigid, trying to hold back the tide, or let the water flow around you, shaping you as it passes. Life is like this ocean. Suffering is the tide. It will come no matter how hard we try to stop it. The question isn't whether you'll experience pain, but how you'll meet it. Will you brace yourself, building walls that eventually crumble? Or will you soften, allowing the waves to sculpt you into something stronger, wiser, more alive? Think of a tree in a storm. Its branches bend under the wind. Its roots dig deeper into the earth. Afterward, it stands taller, its bark thicker, its leaves greener. Without the storm, it would remain fragile, untested. This is the gift of suffering. It forces us to grow. It reminds us we are alive. In a world obsessed with permanence, suffering whispers the truth of impermanence. Nothing lasts, not pain, not pleasure. Clinging to either brings only frustration. Letting go opens the door to freedom. The choice then is yours. Will you continue to run from discomfort, chasing a mirage of endless ease, or will you turn toward the storm, leaning into its lessons? Ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? What fear, grief, or longing am I numbing with distractions? What might happen if I faced it instead? Start small. Sit quietly with your discomfort for 1 minute. Write down what you're feeling without judgment. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Over time, these moments of presence add up. They build a new relationship with suffering, one rooted in courage, not fear. As the screen fades to black, carry this thought with you: suffering isn't your enemy. It's your mirror, reflecting both your fragility and your strength. The question isn't whether you'll suffer, it's whether you'll waste your pain or wield it. Will you let it break you, or will you let it forge you? The answer shapes not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Because when you transform your suffering into strength, you give others permission to do the same. And so, the cycle continues. Pain becomes power. Power becomes purpose. Purpose becomes legacy.